Welcome to our Pecha Kucha on Chinese philosophy. I know I've said this like every time, but Chinese philosophy is really one of my favorites, especially Daoism. I'm really excited about that as a personal philosophy, so I'm really pleased to offer this one. Obviously, Chinese philosophy is huge. We're going to focus on three strings of Chinese philosophy which are particularly important. And in order to understand them, we have to talk about the Warring States period, when China was disunited, the Zhao dynasty had fallen apart, and you have all these wars going on. And at that time, there are a lot of new philosophies trying to find a way to find harmony in life. In this period of war, what can we do to bring life back to harmony? And one of the philosophies that really focuses on that is Daoism. And one of the ways I talked about Daoism before is looking for harmony with nature or harmony with the whole world. This is the Chinese character for the Dao or the road, and really looking for what's the way that we take, what direction shall we go to find harmony with the world. Confucianism also focused on harmony, and Confucianism is focused on societal harmony. How can we find harmony between relationships with people, with who we work with every day? How can we make our society function well and work well? That's the main focus of Confucianism. And it's probably the most influential of the three. And finally, legalism, which has kind of a different perspective and says, instead of harmony, how can we make things work the best way? And it ends up arguing that the best way to make things work is through laws, and this is the Chinese character for law, that if we have strong, clear laws with harsh punishments, then things will go really well. So I'm going to talk about each of these, talking about their founder, and then some other ideas. I'll talk about each of them as we go through. So this is Lao Tzu, the founder of Daoism. We're not sure if he's a real person or not, or if his writings were kind of brought together from a bunch of different ideas. But he's supposed to be someone who actually found the Tao, was directly connected to the Tao. And when we talk about the cosmology of Daoism, we're really wondering, what is the Tao? And the Tao is a force, a presence that spreads out through the world, through all of us, something that we can feel ourselves. And the goal of Daoism is to become in touch with that, because that force gives us a lot of information. So for something like politics, a Taoist ruler is supposed to be in touch with that force and not really do too much. That's the odd thing about Taoism, is that the Taoist ruler steps back, and in being focused himself, his subjects will become harmonious and good on their own. That's kind of the beauty of Taoism. And the ethics is similar. This is the Chinese characters for Wu Wei, which is kind of a natural balance. And the idea of Wu Wei is, again, if you connect personally to the Tao, if you follow the Tao will show you the right thing to do. So instead of trying to figure out the right thing to do, putting a lot of effort into something, you're supposed to just allow that focus to come. And Taoism has been incredibly influential, especially on Buddhism, but some on Confucianism as well. But when Buddhism came into China, it used the language of Taoism. And so this painting is a Chinese painting from the 13th century that is now kept in a Japanese temple in Kyoto. So it kind of demonstrates how Taoism has spread out through all those things. Confucius, he is the man. He is the most famous person we'll be talking about today. Everyone knows Confucius says all these things. And when you talk about that, you're talking about a book called the Analects, which was a collected book of his sayings that was collected by his disciples. And that's a really important book for Confucianism. When we talk about Confucian cosmology, the key thing is this idea of the ripple effect. And we're not throwing things into ponds, but that when you do something, your actions have effects that ripple outwards from you to the people around you, and to the people around them, and to people around them. And that has obvious implications for how you should work. So for politics, obviously the king is at the center. His ripples are rather large. And so Confucianism argues that he has to really follow the virtues. Confucianism has a lot of talk about virtue. And if he is virtuous, that ripple effect moves out from him rather quickly and makes his society virtuous. So it argues that the king has a lot of personal responsibility. And for ethics, you have this idea of the Junzi, which is the Confucian gentleman. And he has the same responsibility, to be virtuous, to respect his relationships with others. You talk about the Confucian 5 relationships, to follow the rituals, observe his ancestors. And if he does those things, once again, the ripple effect will move out from him and make things better in the world. Now, the influence of Confucianism is huge. This is kind of a simplistic map of Confucianism moving to Korea and Japan. But Confucianism spread all through China, was the major philosophy school for Chinese dynasties all the way up until essentially the revolutions of the 19th century. So it's incredibly influential. All right, we're on to legalism, and to talk about legalism, we have to talk about this guy Shang Yang, who is not really a philosopher himself. He is actually an official of the ancient Qin kingdom of that Warring States period, and he made legalistic reforms, and some of those reforms we studied before, and they helped bring the Qin to power. And the cosmology, it's not so philosophical as Daoism and legalism. Instead, the basic idea is that people are selfish and evil, and if we want to make good things happen, we have to whip them. You see the guy whipping there. And strong laws, strong, clear laws with harsh punishments are what people need in order to do the right thing. And legalist politics have these three ideas: law, method, and legitimacy. Law, clear laws, harsh laws, and laws that treat everybody the same way. Method, you sometimes have to do things that seem wrong for the good of everybody. And finally, legitimacy is kind of connected to the mandate of heaven. It's not the ruler himself, but the position of the ruler that is important. Finally, legalist ethics are really focused on the law. As individuals, you have to follow the law. As rulers, you have to institute good laws and have good practices. And especially the ruler has a lot of responsibility in legalism, because if he doesn't do a good job, he can be taken down. And finally, influence. Legalism fails as a real philosophical school after the Qin dynasty. But this phrase here in Chinese means Confucianism in the front, legalism in the back, and suggests that Chinese history is dominated by Confucianism on the surface, but the truth is that a lot of the actual policies were legalistic in reality. So that's kind of something to chew on as we go. Thank you very much for listening to our Chinese philosophy Pecha Kucha, and I hope you check out the next one. Thanks again.